The celestial tides shimmered into existence above Earth's atmosphere, its crystalline hull refracting the blue-green glow of the planet below. The Zarathi research vessel moved with the delicate grace of its creators, its bioluminescent running lights pulsing in soft, rhythmic patterns. Inside the observation dome, High Scholar Yelthas of the Zarathi Exploratory Collective stretched his translucent tendrils, the bioluminescent nodes along his body flickering with excitement. "Behold," Yelthas announced to his team, his voice a melodic ripple, "the infamous Amazon Reclamation Zone. The last untouched wilderness of humanity's cradle." Junior Scholar Vixis floated beside him, her crystalline exoskeleton humming with curiosity. "It appears unremarkable, a dense biomass. Yes, but hardly the terror the humans describe." A third Zarathi scholar, Orthek, manipulated the holographic display with delicate appendages. "Their warnings are likely exaggerated. Superstition, perhaps they call it, the green hell." Yelthas let out a soft, chiming laugh. "A primitive fear of the untamed. We have mapped the jungles of 100 worlds. This is merely another ecosystem to catalogue." On the bridge of the USN Frontier, Captain Elias Vance watched the alien vessels approach on the tactical display. His fingers drummed against the armrest of his command chair. "Open a channel," he ordered. The comm officer nodded. "Channel open, sir." Vance leaned forward. "Celestial tides. This is Captain Elias Vance of the United Earth Systems Navy. You are approaching a restricted zone. The Amazon Reclamation Zone is classified under Earth Defense Protocol 7. No unauthorized entry is permitted." Yelthas' voice came through the speakers, smooth and patronizing. "Captain Vance, we are scholars of the Galactic Federation. We do not recognize your local superstitions. This is a scientific expedition." Vance's jaw tightened. "It's not superstition. That zone is alive in ways your scanners won't show you. Turn your ship around." Vixis' laughter tinkled over the comm. "Captain, with respect, we have studied far more hostile environments than this. Your fear is quaint, but unnecessary." Dr. Lena Park, standing beside Vance, crossed her arms. "They're not listening." Vance exhaled sharply. "I know." On the celestial tides, Yelthas gestured to the navigation console. "Proceed to optimal scanning altitude. Begin full spectrum analysis." The ship descended, its delicate frame gliding over the canopy. Below, the jungle stretched endlessly, a sea of towering ferns and twisted vines. The air shimmered with drifting spores, glowing faintly in the twilight. Vixis studied the readouts. "Fascinating. The biomass density is off the charts, and the genetic variance, it's unlike anything in the Federation databases." Orthek adjusted his scanner. "There's something else. The vegetation is displaying. Reactive behavior, it's shifting." Yelthas dismissed the concern with a wave. "Wind patterns, nothing more." Then the first vine struck. It lashed upward from the canopy, whip fast, slamming against the celestial tide's hull with a sound like shattering glass. The ship shuddered, alarms blared. "Evasive maneuvers," Yelthas cried. The pilot jerked the controls, but more vines surged from below, coiling around the ship's delicate spires. The crystalline plating cracked under the pressure. Vixis' voice trembled. It's targeting us." On the frontier, Sergeant Marcus Cole watched the feed from the drones. "They're screwed." Vance gripped the comm. "Celestial tides. You need to pull out now. Full thrusters." Yelthas' reply was frantic. "We're trying." The controls, they're not responding. The jungle below moved. Trees twisted, their trunks groaning as they repositioned. The vines tightened, dragging the ship lower. Then the scanners lit up with something new. Orthek's voice was a whisper. By the depths beneath the canopy, Something massive shifted. The ground itself seemed to ripple, as if breathing. The trees parted just enough to reveal a glimpse of what lay below, a network of pulsating roots, thick as starship hulls, threaded with bioluminescent veins. And then the celestial tide's comms went dead. Silence filled the frontier's bridge. Dr. Park spoke first. They just learned why we don't go in there. Vance stared at the last flicker of the alien ship's signal before it vanished into the green. And they're not coming back out. The Zarathi survey team descended through the emerald haze, their crystalline boots barely touching the spongy ground. Senior researcher Velis adjusted her bioluminescent nodes, casting a soft blue glow across the twisted vegetation. Scanners show no hostile life forms above microbial level, she announced, her voice echoing through the comms. Typical human superstition. This is just vegetation. Her junior Tasik floated nervously beside her, his gelatinous form rippling with unease. Protocol requires atmospheric suits, Senior. Human warnings specified. Human warnings, Velis interrupted, mandibles clicking in amusement. From a species that still fears the dark, look around you. She gestured at the towering ferns, their fronds swaying gently in the artificial breeze. This is a garden, not a battlefield. The team spread out, their delicate instruments humming as they catalogued the flora. Tasik paused beside a cluster of violet mushrooms, their caps pulsing faintly. Fascinating bioluminescent synchronization, he murmured, reaching out with a scanning tendril. The mushrooms recoiled, then lunged. A scream tore through the comms as the mushrooms latched onto Tasik's membrane, dissolving through his exoskeleton in seconds. Velis spun, her nodes flashing crimson. Containment protocol, quarantine zone. Her words died as the ground beneath her shifted. What she'd taken for moss surged upward, wrapping around her legs with terrifying strength. Help, it is. Her transmission dissolved into static as the moss crept over her vocal nodes. The remaining Zarathi scrambled backward, their panic sending erratic light patterns across their skins. One tripped over a root, except the root moved, coiling around his torso like a serpent. His shriek ended abruptly as the vine constricted, pulling him into a nearby thicket. The plants rustled, then went still. On the celestial tides, Commander Yixis watched the last feed from the survey team with mounting horror. The screen showed only swaying ferns and a single discarded scanner, its casing already half consumed by creeping vines. Recall all personnel, he ordered, his voice unsteady. Seal the lower decks and, he swallowed hard. Open a channel to the Krelak's Warbringer. In the Warbringer's command nexus, Sub-Commander Vorsk leaned forward, his scaled lips curling. You woke the jungle, little jellyfish, he rumbled. Now you want us to clean your mess? Yixis's bioluminescence flickered with shame. We require assistance. Our science teams are not equipped to handle a few aggressive plants, Vorsk interrupted, his tail lashing. Pathetic. He turned to his weapons officer. Prepare the plasma incinerators. We'll burn this infestation down to bedrock. Aboard the USN frontier, Dr. Lena Park watched the unfolding disaster on her monitor, her fingers flying across the keyboard. They're landing troops, she muttered. Idiots. Captain Vance leaned over her shoulder, his jaw tight. Can the zone survive a full Krelak's purge? Lena didn't look up. Survive, Captain. The zone isn't the one in danger. She pulled up a thermal scan. The jungle's heat signatures were rearranging, converging beneath the Krelak's landing site. It is learning below. The first Krelak's warriors stomped through the undergrowth, their plasma casters set to maximum. Scour it all, Vorsk ordered through their helmets. Leave nothing alive. The lead warrior kicked over a rotting log and froze. The log uncoiled, revealing rows of needle, thin teeth before he could fire. A dozen more pseudopods erupted from the soil, spearing through his armor like paper. His scream was cut short as the vines dragged him under. The remaining Krelaks opened fire, their plasma bolts igniting the foliage. For a moment, it seemed to work. The vines recoiled, the fungal growths blackening under the heat. Then the trees shook. A cloud of shimmering spores descended, clinging to their armor. The warriors laughed, brushing them off, until the first one collapsed, his breathing apparatus clogged with rapidly growing filaments. Vorsk watched from orbit as his squad's vital signs flickered out, one by one. "What kind of hell planet is this?" he snarled. On the Frontiers Bridge, Sergeant Cole crossed his arms. "Told you," he said to no one in particular. "Never piss off something that has had 1 billion years to practice killing." Lena zoomed in on a thermal anomaly, a massive heat signature moving beneath the Krellex landing zone. "Captain," she said quietly, "I think it is waking up." Vance exhaled slowly, then God help anyone still down there. Outside, the jungle pulsed, its bioluminescence flaring like a heartbeat waiting. The jungle trembled as the Krellex Warbringer tore through the atmosphere, its plasma drive scorching the canopy below. The massive reptilian warship blotted out the sun, casting the entire valley into shadow. On the bridge, Commander Vorsk adjusted his scaled ceremonial sash and sneered at the holographic display showing the panicked Zarathi survivors. "Pathetic," he hissed, his forked tongue flicking between serrated teeth. "A few plants scare the galaxy's most delicate minds." His tactical officer, Kras, chuckled as he powered up the primary weapons array. "Shall we cleanse the infestation, Commander?" Vorsk leaned forward, his claws tapping the armrest. "Broadcast to all frequencies. Let the humans hear this." The comms officer nodded, and Vorsk's voice boomed across every open channel. "Attention primitive lifeforms. This is Commander Vorsk of the Krellex Enforcement Fleet. Observe how a civilized species handles pests." Aboard the USN Frontier, Captain Vance slammed his fist on the console. "Damn reptiles. Open a channel to that overgrown iguana." But the Krellex had already blocked all incoming transmissions. On the view screen, the Warbringer's ventral cannons glowed orange as they charged below. The last surviving Zarathi scientists huddled around their ruined landing craft. Clecia, their lead xenobiologist, clutched her fractured crystalline arm. "They'll burn everything," she whispered. The jungle around them had gone eerily still, the bioluminescent plants dimming as if holding their breath. The first plasma volley hit like a meteor strike. A firestorm erupted across the valley, incinerating trees and boiling the river dry. The Zarathi screamed as the shockwave knocked them flat. Clecia looked up in time to see the second salvo streak downward, then froze as the vines above her twisted mid-air, intercepting the plasma bolts. The vegetation absorbed the energy, glowing red, hot before dispersing it through root networks deep underground. On the Warbringer, Kras's console flashed warnings. "Commander, the jungle just—" "I see it," Vorsk snapped. The hologram showed the firestorm dissipating unnaturally fast. The flames sucked into the ground. "Switch to kinetic bombardment. Let's see their plant stop tungsten rods." The railguns cycled with a mechanical whine. 20 rods the size of skyscrapers dropped from the warship's belly. They hit terminal velocity in seconds, then vanished into the canopy without explosions. No impact tremors, no destruction, just silence. Vorsk's crest flared in anger. "Scan that area. What just—" Alarms shrieked as the Warbringer lurched violently. "Gravitational anomaly," Kras yelled. "Something's pulling us down." The jungle had responded. Vines thicker than subway tunnels lashed upward, wrapping around the warship's hull. Bioluminescent patterns flared across their surfaces, patterns that matched the neural networks of a sentient being. The vines pulsed, injecting a viscous fluid that ate through the Krellex's armor plating like acid. "All hands repel boarders," Vorsk roared, but it was too late. The vines had already breached Deck Fay. Security feeds showed Krellex warriors firing plasma rifles at the encroaching vegetation. Uselessly, the plants absorbed the energy, grew stronger. One warrior screamed as a vine speared through his chest plate, lifting him off his feet before dissolving him in seconds. Aboard the Frontier, Dr. Park watched the sensors with horrified fascination. "It is learning," she murmured. "Every attack, it adapts faster." Sergeant Cole cracked his knuckles. "Told you. You don't fight the zone, you survive it." Below, Cleisha and her team stumbled through the suddenly shifting jungle. The path behind them sealed shut as trees uprooted and replanted themselves. A low subsonic hum vibrated through the ground, the sound of something vast and ancient stirring. Then the screaming started. Krellek's drop pods had landed minutes earlier, deploying 500 of their finest warriors. Now their comms channels filled with garbled transmissions. Thorns in my eyes. Armor's sprouting roots. It is inside my static. One video feed reached the Warbringer before cutting out. It showed a Krellek's commando pinned against a tree, his own armor flowering with barbed vines. Behind him, the bark peeled back to reveal a wet, pulsing darkness. Something breathed in that darkness. The feed died. Vorsk's scales paled. Full retreat. "Get us!" The ship shuddered violently as the vines reached the engines. Warning lights flooded the bridge. "Core breach in progress," Krass yelled. "We're losing power." The Frontier's comms crackled to life unexpectedly. Vorsk's voice, stripped of its earlier arrogance, came through. "Human vessel, if you can hear this, help us." Captain Vance exchanged glances with his crew. Outside, the Warbringer listed dangerously, half its hull already swallowed by the living jungle. Sergeant Cole checked his sidearm. "Orders, Captain." Vance took a deep breath. "Prep the dropship, we're going in." Dr. Park grabbed his arm. "Are you insane? The zone's in full defensive mode." Vance smiled grimly. "Exactly. Which means it'll recognize us." As the Frontier launched its dropship, the jungle below seemed to pause. The vines hesitated. Deep in the bioluminescent gloom, something watched the approaching humans and remembered. The Krellek's Warbringer's plasma bombardment lit up the jungle canopy like a second sunrise. From the bridge of the USN Frontier, Captain Vance watched the firestorm through narrowed eyes. "They're not just burning the vegetation," Dr. Park whispered. "They're sterilizing the topsoil, wiping out entire micro-ecosystems." On screen, Commander Vorsk's scaled face filled the comm display. "Observe, humans. This is how a civilized species handles pests." His forked tongue flicked out in what the Krelleks considered a smile. The transmission cut as another volley of plasma rained down. Sergeant Cole cracked his knuckles. "That lizard's gonna regret those words." The jungle reacted before Cole finished speaking. Bioluminescent vines lashed upward like whipcords, wrapping around the Warbringer's gun turrets. The plasma streams sputtered and died as organic matter clogged their barrels. A chorus of alarms blared across the Frontier's bridge. "Multiple energy spikes below the canopy," reported Ensign Rivera. "It is like the whole damn forest just woke up." Down in the war zone, Krellek's troop transports touched down in clearing zones, or what they thought were clearings. The moment their armored boots hit the ground, the earth itself seemed to shift. Private Jacks of the Fayed Assault Battalion had just enough time to see his commander sink waist deep into what appeared to be solid ground before screaming. The soil flowed like liquid, dissolving armor, plating as it climbed. "Fall back!" Jax yelled into his comm. No response. He turned to see his squad's heavy gunner standing frozen, helmet tilted upward. Following the gaze, Jax saw the trees weren't trees at all, just impossibly tall stalks with bulbous tips that pulsed with the same rhythm as a heartbeat. Then the bulbs opened. A cloud of shimmering spores descended. The Frontier's sensors went wild. Electrical activity increasing exponentially, Park reported, fingers flying over her console. "Captain, Those aren't just plants down there. They're showing neural patterns, complex ones. Vance gripped his armrests as the Warbringer listed suddenly to port. What just hit them? Nothing mechanical, Cole said grimly. Look at their engine signatures. The Krelek ship's mighty ion drive sputtered. Through magnification, they could see tendrils of black vine growing through the exhaust ports, their surfaces glittering with metallic deposits. It is incorporating the ship's own alloys into its structure, Park realized. Like a reef building around a wreck. A distress call finally came through. Not from the Warbringer, but from a Zarathi science pod that had been observing from high orbit. Human vessel, we're detecting. The transmission dissolved into static as something massive breached the canopy below them. A trunk-like column of interwoven vegetation rose kilometers into the air, its surface rippling with patterns that hurt to look at for too long. Was that writing? Ensign Rivera asked. Park adjusted her scanners. Not writing, more like a diagram, a chemical formula maybe. Her breath caught. Captain, it is mapping our ship's hull composition learning. The Warbringer's main guns suddenly swiveled, not downward, but toward the Zarathi observation fleet. Plasma fire streaked through the atmosphere. 3 science vessels exploded before the remaining Zarathi could jump to emergency warp. Those weren't Krelek's firing, Cole said quietly. The ship's still there, but the crew. On screen, the Warbringer's bridge came into view through its observation windows. No movement, just dark, vine, choked corridors, and the occasional glint of something moving between stations. Then, abruptly, the ship's comm activated. No video, just audio, wet, labored breathing, and a clicking sound like branches tapping glass. A Krelak's voice finally spoke. But the words were wrong. Not the guttural hiss of their language, but something that mimicked it while missing all the inflections. We are learning you, it said. Then, with terrible clarity, you burn. We remember burning. The transmission cut. The Warbringer's engines flared one last time. Not with propulsion, but with a cascade of internal explosions as the ship tore itself apart from within. Chunks of superheated debris rained down onto the jungle below, where they landed. The canopy pulsed as if satisfied. Dr. Park's hands shook as she accessed her research logs. They think this is a war, it is not. The zone is curious. She zoomed in on a thermal scan showing the debris patterns. It is testing us, seeing what we'll do when attacked, how we react to pain. Cole checked his sidearm. So that thing down there is what, some kind of giant brain? Not a brain, Park corrected. A network like mycelium, but spanning the entire zone, and it has been watching us for centuries. She pulled up historical data. Every expedition that disappeared, every terraforming attempt that failed, it was learning from them, adapting. Vance rubbed his temples. And now it has got a Krelek's warship's worth of new data. The bridge lights flickered as an energy surge passed beneath them. On the main screen, the jungle's bioluminescence fled brighter, forming distinct patterns across hundreds of square kilometers. Park's scanner beeped frantically. It is changing its chemical signatures, mimicking our engine emissions. Captain, I think it is trying to communicate. Cole snorted. Great. We came to rescue idiots and found a planet-sized Venus flytrap that wants to chat. Sergeant, Vance warned, but Park interrupted. No, he is right. That is exactly what this is. She pointed to the scanner readouts. Look at the molecular patterns. It is replicating our comm frequencies, not to attack, to talk. A slow, horrified realization dawned on her face. And it started right after the Krelaks fired on the Zarathi. It thinks that is how species communicate. The frontier shuddered as something massive moved in the atmosphere below them. The scanners showed a shape rising, not a plant this time, but a perfect replica of the Warbringer's silhouette, woven from ling vines and glowing spores. Its guns swiveled toward the remaining Zarathi vessels. All hands brace for. Vance began, but the attack never came. The organic warbringer held position, its surface rippling. Then, with impossible precision, it recreated the last transmission from the real ship. That same distorted voice, "You burn. We remember burning." Park's console lit up with cross-species translation algorithms. "It is not attacking," she whispered. "It is asking a question." She turned to Vance, face pale. "Captain, I think it wants to know why we destroy what we don't understand." Outside, the jungle waited. The USN Frontiers shuttle touched down at the edge of the kill zone, its landing struts sinking slightly into the spongy earth. Captain Elias Vance was the first out, his boots crunching on what looked like ordinary leaf litter, until the ground twitched beneath him. He froze, hand raised to halt the others. "Stay sharp," he murmured. "This place remembers footsteps." Behind him, Sergeant Marcus Cole adjusted the straps of his survival pack, his eyes scanning the shifting canopy. "You sure this is a rescue op? Cap feels more like walking into a mouth." Dr. Lena Park stepped down beside them, her scanner already chirping. "It's not a mouth, it's a nervous system." She tapped the display, where alien biosignatures flickered in and out of existence. "And it's watching us." A scream echoed from deeper in the jungle, high-pitched, gurgling Krelax. Vance motioned the team forward. "Move slow, no sudden gestures. And for God's sake, don't touch anything green and glowing." The jungle parted for them. Vines uncoiled from their path, ferns leaned away as if making room. Cole exhaled sharply. "Yeah, that's not creepy at all." They found the first survivor 50 meters in. A Zarathi scientist, her crystalline exoskeleton half dissolved, was cradled in a nest of pulsating vines. Her bioluminescence flickered weakly. Dr. Park knelt, running a scanner over her. "She's alive, barely." The Zarathis voice bubbled through a damaged vocal membrane. "You walked through the sentinels. They didn't attack." Vance crouched beside her. "Where are the others?" A shudder ran through the ground. The trees groaned. Cole's rifle snapped up. Movement. 3 o'clock. A Krelax warrior stumbled into the clearing, his armor overgrown with thorned tendrils. One eye was gone, replaced by a blooming fungal growth. He collapsed at Vance's feet, hissing through broken teeth. "Kill me." Dr. Park reached for her medkit, but the Krelax lashed out weakly. No more experiments. His remaining eye rolled toward the humans. The forest, it learns. It took our weapons, our ships. Now it takes us. The vines around them tightened. Cole shifted his stance. Cap were being surrounded. Vance stood slowly, arms spread. "We're not here to fight." The jungle held its breath. Then, impossibly, the vines retreated. A path opened ahead, leading to a clearing where the wreckage of a Krelax dropship lay half consumed by the undergrowth. Inside, 2 more Zarathi scientists huddled, their scanners dark. One looked up as the humans approached. You're not food," Dr. Park snorted, observant. Vance helped them up. "Can you walk?" The Zarathi trembled. "It let you pass. Why?" Cole smirked, patting the trunk of a nearby tree like an old friend. "Because we knock first." A deep, resonant hum vibrated through the ground. The trees swayed without wind. Dr. Park's scanner screeched, then displayed a single line of text. Recognition confirmed. Vance exhaled. "It knows we belong here." One of the Zarathi scientists stared at the humans with dawning horror. "This isn't your territory. You're part of it." The jungle watched, waiting. Sergeant Cole slung his rifle. "Like I said, we don't conquer this place." He nodded to the trembling aliens. "We negotiate." The path home stayed open just long enough. The air hummed with something deeper than sound. The surviving Zarathi huddled together, their bioluminescent patterns flickering erratically. Fear colors, Dr. Park noted. Even the Kreleks, what few remained, had stopped snarling. Their scaled hands trembled around useless weapons. Captain Vance wiped sweat from his brow. The jungle had gone unnaturally still. "It is waiting," Sergeant Cole muttered, his eyes scanning the shifting foliage. "Not attacking, considering us." Then the ground breathed. Vines uncoiled from the trees, not with violence, but with eerie precision. They wove together, forming archways, then shapes, humanoid, then alien, then something in between. The air shimmered, and suddenly the survivors weren't in the jungle anymore. They stood in a memory. A city burned. Not a Zarathi spire or Krelak's fortress, but a human one. Skyscrapers toppled as something vast and green swallowed them whole. "New York," Dr. Park whispered. "The Great Reclamation War." Faye, the vision shifted. Human soldiers firing into the advancing green, their bullets useless. Then the moment the guns fell silent. The moment humanity understood. The scene dissolved into another, a human child, hand outstretched, touching a pulsating vine. The jungle coiled around her wrist, not attacking, communicating. "This isn't just a biome," Dr. Park said, her voice shaking. "It is a neural network, a consciousness that evolved alongside us." The Zarathi scientist, Clesis, let out a shuddering click. "You knew." Captain Vance shook his head. "We knew enough to stay out." The visions came faster. Human researchers setting up perimeter fences, not to keep the jungle in, but to keep people out. The first terraformers who tried to tame the zone, their screams as the very air turned against them. The treaty signed not with ink, but with blood and silence. Then, horrifyingly, the jungle showed them why it had allowed the humans to enter now. A Krelek's warrior, one of the first to burn the canopy, appeared in the vision. The zone had kept him alive, studying him. His body was half consumed, tendrils threading through his veins, his eyes wide with unending terror. The message was clear. This is what happens to those who do not learn. The Vithari surveyors, their hive, mind overwhelmed, collapsed into twitching heaps. "It is in our heads," one of them rasped. "It is judging us." Sergeant Cole stepped forward, his hands open. "We didn't bring them here," he said. "Not to the aliens, but to the jungle itself. But we'll take them out if you let us." The air pulsed. A single vine uncurled toward Cole's face. He didn't flinch. Then silence. The visions vanished. The jungle returned to its normal, if impossible, state. The Zarathi gasped, their exoskeletons dull with shock. The Krelaks, for once, had no insults left. Clesis turned to Dr. Park, her voice barely audible. "All this time, we thought your wilderness preserves were about conservation. But they're not, are they?" Dr. Park met her gaze. "They're quarantine zones for our protection." Above them, the canopy rustled. Something massive moved just beyond sight, watching. Waiting, Captain Vance exhaled. "Let's get the hell out of here before it changes its mind." The Krelak's Warbringer's engines sputtered to life. Their once pristine plasma conduits now veined with organic growths that pulsed in time with the jungle below. Commander Vorsk stood at the viewport, his scaled hands trembling as he watched the Amazon reclamation zone recede. His bridge crew moved like ghosts, their eyes hollow, their armor still flecked with spores that had stopped moving. "For now, seal all external vents." Vorsk rasped, "Full quarantine protocols until we reach sterilized space." A junior officer hesitated. "Sir, the Zarathi survivors." "Leave them." Vorsk's voice cracked. "Their ship's already compromised. On the celestial tides." The remaining Zarathi scientists huddled in their med bay, their bioluminescence dimmed to near darkness. Senior researcher Illysis cradled a data tablet, her tendrils twitching, as she replayed the zone's final gift. The visions had come in waves, centuries of human history, wars fought and abandoned, the first terraformers seeding the Amazon with adaptive bio-nanites, then losing control. It wasn't a failed experiment, she whispered. It was a success. Her assistant, trembling, tapped a crystal screen. The Federation Council is demanding our report. What do we tell them? Ilisis watched the jungle shrink on the display. The truth, that Earth's wilderness is a sovereign intelligence, that it judged us and found the Federation wanting. Aboard the USN Frontier, Captain Elias Vance leaned over the comms console, listening to the garbled distress calls from the Warbringer. The Krelak ship was listing badly, its starboard thrusters coughing black smoke. "Should we assist?" asked Lieutenant Cho. Vance shook his head. "They refused our help going in. They'll refuse it now." He turned to Dr. Park. "Status on the zone." Park adjusted her glasses, studying the holographic terrain map. "It's settling, heart rates dropping back to baseline." She pointed to a pulsing gold node deep in the jungle. "It recognized us, our DNA, our history," it remembered. Sergeant Cole grunted, cleaning his machete. "Told ya, we don't conquer, we negotiate." 3 days later, the Galactic Federation received 2 transmissions. The first came from the Zarathi High Council, formally petitioning to classify the Amazon Reclamation Zone as a protected sentient entity. The second came from the Krelak's Imperium, a terse 3-word statement: "Do not return." On Earth, Vance stood at the edge of the zone, the jungle's breath warm against his face. The vines here didn't twitch, the spores hung motionless in the air. "Captain," Park joined him, holding out a scanner. "It's watching us." Vance nodded, had seen the footage from the celestial tides. How the trees had parted for his team, how the Krelaks had been processed. The zone wasn't just alive, it was learning. Cole spat into the undergrowth. "So what now?" Now, Vance turned his back on the jungle. "We tell the galaxy the truth. That space might belong to whoever can take it." He glanced over his shoulder where something massive shifted in the shadows. But Earth's wilderness, it chooses. A year later, the Frontier returned from deep-range patrol to find a single Zarathi probe orbiting Earth. It carried no weapons, no scanners, just a message etched in crystalline script. "We apologize for our trespass. We did not understand." Vance had the message relayed to the surface. That night, satellites recorded a single massive pulse of gold light from the heart of the Amazon. Somewhere below, something answered. Park smiled at the data feed. "Told you it was listening." Cole just shook his head. Damn jungle's got better manners than the Federation. Vance said nothing. He was too busy watching the stars and wondering what other wilderness the galaxy might have underestimated.